Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Coming up tonight, a 45-year winning battle with addiction. We will hear how it was done. First tonight, the skyrocketing rates of depression among teenagers. For teen girls, the suicide rate has doubled in less than a decade. Joining us tonight for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Kimberly Cass, Chair of Pediatrics at the University of Maryland's Upper Chesapeake Health. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Do those numbers surprise you at all, and what do you think is going on?
So they don't surprise me because I've been in the emergency department and we've been noticing this rise. I think a lot of it has to do with the growing pressures on our children of today and the fact that they are embarrassed to talk about, if they're feeling sad, if they're feeling depressed.
I was wondering if it's a coincidence. We're looking at numbers over the last 10 years, and recently in the news was the 10-year anniversary of the iPhone, the first smartphone, and we're past the tipping point where most adolescents, I think, have one. Absolutely.
I think that in the younger generation, if you ask them if a smartphone or social media is more good than bad, they'll say good. If you ask our generation, we'll say bad.
Mixed picture at best.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of differences between the generational ideal of how society should be. And somewhere in the middle is going to be where the answer is.
And I mean, the whole world moves faster than it used to, but the smartphone and the kid who spends most of their time staring at it, it's hard for a parent to really know you can't supervise that too well.
Right. Well, there are a few things that we can actually do to improve that. Number one is when your child goes to bed for the evening, that device should not be in their bedroom with them. That is not where they should charge it. It needs to be in a public place in your home where you can then get online and see what's happening. Look at their Facebook account or Twitter or whatever the next social media site is.
We're dating ourselves talking about
I know, absolutely.
Newfangled, right.
But I think that we need to keep track of that just as we would, when I was young and I was on the phone with my girlfriends, my parents would pick up the phone periodically and find out what we were talking about. We need to do the same things to keep our kids safe until they're emotionally old enough to be able to deal with what's happening online.
And I would guess you like the idea that at dinner time everybody puts the phone down or maybe in a different room.
Absolutely. I think family dinners, is one time to sit down and catch up with what happened with your day. And to open the discussion of, how's everything at school? Are you noticing any pressures? What's been happening?
So what's happening on the phone that can mess with a young person's psyche? I mean, there's so many great things about it. The ability to stay in touch with people, the ability to learn anything almost immediately, but also the ability to reach out and cyber bully somebody.
Absolutely. One of the problems is we all make mistakes. And I'm very glad that when I was going through college, there wasn't social media because I don't know what would be out there. A child makes a mistake now, and that mistake is kept with them forever, and it haunts them. And then kids will utilize that, and they'll make fun of them. So when I was young, I was in school, someone wanted to pick on me, they picked on me, and then when I got home, I was in the safety of my home, my mom and dad, my family, and I could forget about all of that. Now, kids can't forget about that. It's with them 24/7.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question for the doctor about depression, you can give us a call. The number is up on the screen. You can also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. Do boys and girls handle this differently? The numbers I mentioned at the top, the change over the last decade was more severe for girls than for boys.
Yes. So depression definitely affects slightly larger numbers of girls than boys. Some of that is it a confirmation bias because girls are more likely to talk about it and boys will hold their information close to them. But as far as successful suicide rates, more girls attempt, more males are successful.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it certainly is something that we're seeing a rise in both genders, in all races, and in all sects of society.
What can the medical community do about this? You work in a setting where you see people who are in crisis. Ahead of that, what can the average pediatrician be working on?
So the average pediatrician, as well as the schools and counselors and parents, we can listen to our kids and we can ask the uncomfortable questions. There's nothing embarrassing about being depressed. There shouldn't be a stigma associated with it. So when we ask our kids, how are you feeling? Are you feeling sad? Or if we notice, why haven't you talked to your friends lately? Why have you not wanted to go to sports? Why have you done these things? And continue to ask the questions, and then also ask the direct questions. If your child has been feeling sad, or as a pediatrician, we do a suicide screening tool saying, have you ever thought about killing yourself? Do you think the world would be a better place if you were dead? We need to ask these questions so that there's an opening for kids to tell us about it. If they feel they're inconveniencing us, then they're gonna just be quiet about it and we're not going to know.
Let's grab a phone call. Anne Arundel County, this is Jean. Jean, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
I had read some months ago about this article about the FDA approving this experimentation of some extremely fine ground plastic being added to certain foods. I don't know what the foods were, but the possibility of this stuff lingering in the tissues of our young people, could that be?
Jean, interesting question. Thank you very much for the phone call. More broadly, additives in foods, is there anything else to look at in terms of increased depression rates, or just what they're eating?
I mean, I think in general, we all know that, a well-balanced diet with fruits and vegetables and plenty of water a day and rest and taking care of our bodies is definitely going to improve health. So I think there's probably some small portion of that, but I don't think it's the major contributing factor of today.
You think that there's too much stigma associated with depression? Shouldn't be any.
Correct. One of the things that as parents, and I probably have done this to my children too, is, if they're sad about something and it seems trivial to us, we say, oh, get over it, or just wait till you grow up. It's so much worse. It's a horrible thing to say to our children. When, in honest, if we could just pause a moment and listen, we could really learn a lot from our kids about what's going on in their life. And then if you're noticing that they're sad, that they're crying more, that they're unable to sleep at night, that they're extraordinarily stressed out about something happening at school, ask the questions, are you being bullied? What's happening? How are your friendships? And always, there's a lot of resources online. There's, a suicide hotline. There's your pediatrician. There's the local emergency department if you feel your child is in crisis, but get help.
Let's pretend we're teenagers and we're in high school or something, or middle school, and there's some sort of bullying, or there's some sort of social issue. It's something that's got you tied in knots. How do you handle it? What advice would you give your teenage self if that teenage self had a smartphone?
The first is to talk to your parents and then talk to your guidance counselor. Your guidance counselors have programs, and they want to know earlier on so that they can get something while it's small before it becomes very big. They can address it a lot more easily at that point. And the other thing is, if it's really to the point where it's bothering you, turn off your phone. Talk to your family. They'll lead you in the right direction.
Tougher time to be a parent today, would you say?
I would say yes.
From experience?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that as your children grow, I guess the stress in your relationship with your child changes. You are centrally the most important thing in their lives, and as they grow, you become less important, is what it feels in your heart. But in reality, you're more important. But you need to, you don't need to necessarily check their bathwater anymore, but you need to check their whatever social media site. You need to be present for your kids, and you need to listen to them.
Have you heard from parents you've talked with, anybody who's got a great approach to doing it? Because I wonder if there isn't just a divide between parents who are completely hands-off and parents who are maybe looking over the shoulder a little too much, if that's possible.
It is absolutely possible. I mean, your child has to be given the tools that they need to grow up and succeed in life, and they can't do that if you don't allow them some freedom. But they need supervised freedom. It's, trust but verify. Doesn't mean that you can't allow your child to grow up, but you have to guide them in the right direction. And as far as hands-off, I don't think any parent wants to be hands-off. I think that parents work one, sometimes two jobs. Parents are both, working weird hours late at night trying to provide for their families. So I don't think it's bad parenting. I think it's just understanding that maybe you need to take an extra hour in the evening. You need to put down, don't tune into the news for 10 minutes so that you can listen to your child when they're talking to you.
Let's wrap this up with a little advice summarize the advice for parents and also for teens. Two things. One, the context of just parenting in this age of amplified pressure, faster everything. And second, where there might be a concern about depression or potential suicide.
I think the first is keep your lines of communication open with your children. And children, keep your lines of communication open with your parents. They're a little smarter than you even know. And then if you are concerned, get help. Do not ignore or minimize your child's concerns. If you are concerned, there is a suicide hotline. It's 1-800-273-TALK, and they're available 24/7. They'll put you into contact with people in your community that can help you.
Dr. Kim Cass is the chair of pediatrics at the University of Maryland's Upper Chesapeake Health. Doctor, thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Coming up, lessons from a lifetime spent fighting drugs.
Hi, I'm Larry Unger, here with Judy Woodruff of the PBS NewsHour.
From politics and the economy to health, science, and education, the NewsHour delivers a thorough analysis of current events to help you put the day's news in context.
Judy and the NewsHour team have set the standard for deep and unbiased reporting. We are so pleased to present it as part of our Public Square programming.
Join me on the PBS NewsHour weeknights at 6.
Got an unused vehicle going nowhere? Donate it to the one place that can take you any place. Visit mpt.org/vehicles and support the programs you love on MPT.
The MPT app puts our programs right at your fingertips, so you can choose when to watch, what to watch, wherever you want to watch it. Download it now.
What happens in Japan and Asia matters to me. And with NHK World's newsroom in Tokyo, I get the news live from Japan right at the start of my day.
New ideas come out of Asia all the time. NHK Newsline reports on business, technology, and world events from Tokyo to Bangkok.
Once in the morning gives me a heads up on the competition.
Every hour on the hour, the news I want from Asia.
Watch NHK World now on Comcast Channel 268 and Verizon Channel 480.
And with us now in the studio is Mike Gimbel, president of Mike Gimbel Associates. Mike, good to see you.
Oh, it's great to be back.
There can't be too many people watching tonight who do not know who you are. But for those people, Mike has been in the public sector and private sector in drug abuse prevention for a long time, and you're celebrating an anniversary coming up.
Yeah, this is very special. I'm a recovering heroin addict myself, and October 1st will be 45 years since I got clean. And that's a pretty amazing thing for me, especially since my mother just recently passed away a few weeks ago. And she and my dad, who passed away several years ago, were so instrumental in keeping me alive. I mean, what things that I did to them were just horrible. And they never gave up.
You stole from them?
I stole from them. I had the house robbed over again. So I took them broke. I took my family broke from lawyers, wrecked cars, stealing, just horrible things that heroin does to you. And they never gave up. And so she just died a few weeks ago, and it was just a very emotional time for me because of what they did to keep me alive. And I've always dedicated my life to helping other people because they kept me alive, and I always felt that was my obligation to do.
And the great part of that story is that they had time to complete the journey from not being so happy with young Mike to being, I'm sure, really, really proud of Mike.
That was probably my greatest joy, was that my parents saw me come out the other end. After everything they went through, that when I got clean and got into this helping business and was the drug czar for Baltimore County and the TV shows and the stuff that I did, they were so proud. And to the very last day, you know, my mom she knew and she was proud, and it meant a lot. But, you know, someone told me a long time ago, a rabbi said that, you know, that God gave you a gift to be alive, and your gift back to God was what you do with it.
Do you remember the last time you used?
Yes. It was actually, yes, I do. It was on the airplane going to treatment.
Wow.
I was going to California. You know, you know, most of my drug use was here in Baltimore. I was literally living downtown with an African-American family because I was the white kid from the suburbs using heroin, and that was unheard of back then, unlike today. And so I lived downtown with that African-American family, and that was my drug dealer. And so, you know, I did a lot of bad deals. I ripped off a lot of people and a lot of violence and a lot of horrible things. And so when my time came to get help, I went to California to get help because I could not stay here. I would have been dead.
All right, we want to talk about your recovery process, but let me remind our viewers, if you have a question for Mike Gimbel about the broader heroin opioid problem we're having, give us a call. We'll have the number on the screen, or tweet your questions, Twitter address @MPT News. So you got hooked the old-fashioned way before everybody was getting hooked on opioid pain pills handed out by doctors, dentists, and who knows what. How did it get started?
No, I was like, you know, I was a kid of the 60s. I was a hippie and started smoking pot like everyone else did, drinking, smoking pot, work your way up the ladder. By the time I was a junior at Milford Mill High School, I had used just about every drug but heroin. And then my summer of the 11th grade, I started to use heroin because I felt it was like my next drug that I should try. And my entire senior year at Milford Mill High School, I was hooked on heroin. Wow. Because I didn't understand what it was. I didn't know how powerful it was. And graduated high school, and then it just got worse.
It seems like today, who out there could not know how powerful it is, yet people are getting hooked at an unprecedented rate?
You know, what's happening today is it's very different, but at the same time, it's very similar. As you said, we have a doctor issue. Doctors help create this problem by overprescribing pain medications. And what happened, it's not that people don't need pain medications. It's just that they have to understand that if you take an Oxycontin pill for 30 days, you're going to be addicted. And that's okay if the doctor is working with the patient to help them and explain to them that we're going to take another 60 days and slowly wean you off. They don't do that. And what happened is they leave the patient hanging with an addiction without realizing they have an addiction, because doctors do not get trained in addiction. That's the root cause problem. So you have all these patients out there that are addicted to painkillers. They're trying to doctor shop. That gets cut off. And at the same time, our nation has gone through this increase of very powerful heroin. Has flooded the streets, so it's
we'll come
easier.
back to that and the fentanyl. Let's grab a phone call. Anne Arundel County, this is David. David, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that the guest is on tonight, because this problem is, you know, in Maryland pretty bad, as well as the country. They talk about it in Washington, D.C., about attacking it. But I'm trying to think of a real solution to it. Sir, when you grew up and you became addicted to it, 45 years removed, it was a different ball game with the heroin. You moved up the ladder. But today with the fentanyl, making it 100 times more powerful than the traditional heroin, if you look at it from a couple angles, the doctors do need to stop prescribing the opioids, the Oxycontins, and all those type of related prescription drugs to the patient. My wife had a knee replacement, and she didn't want that. She used ibuprofen 800 milligram, and she was in a lot of pain, iced it down, and was fine. I mean, they have to back off number one there, I think, a little bit, the doctors. But
David, we appreciate the phone call. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know what he was. I know exactly what he was getting at. Here's the thing. Where we are right now, and the reason we're losing this battle, because the numbers of overdose keep going up higher and higher and higher, but what we're forgetting, and we can't measure this battle by overdose, because for the overdoses in Maryland was about 2,000, but we probably have tens of thousands of people addicted that didn't overdose. And we can't measure this by just overdose, and that's what we've done. We've started battling this by how do we reduce overdose. And so we've came up with the Narcan medication, which is an amazing medication, but it doesn't change the behavior of an addict. It brings them back from an overdose. So bottom line here is, without long-term treatment, we need treatment on demand so that every time we get hold of someone, whether it be through the courts, an overdose, an emergency room visit, that we can immediately funnel them into a system that keeps them in treatment for at least a year.
When you took that plane ride, California, I guess,
yes,
for your treatment, why did it work? Was that the first time you'd been in treatment?
No.
Did they tell you something? Did they dry you out? What did they do that worked?
No one knows. Nobody knows what works when. And the key with addiction is this, is that the addict will get a little window where something bad will happen. Something bad has to happen to an addict before they're going to change. Because you don't change your behavior if everything's good. You bring someone back from Narcan, now they're alive, and then they go back out on the street. Why stop? Why change? We need to change behavior. How do we change behavior? We need to use treatment. We need to do something different than just giving them medications. We can't lock them up. That doesn't change anything. And we can't keep medicating them. We need it's the one thing we haven't done. When you look at everything that's been done around the state of Maryland and across the country, what we don't have is treatment on demand, meaning I don't care how much money you have, that you can get long-term residential treatment for your addiction. That's the secret. And that's the part that has been missing, that I'm hoping the governor and at the federal level are working toward in creating. Look, we spend $40,000 to keep someone in a prison bed, and 70% will go back to prison.
We must have way more treatment than we had a year ago, 5 years ago.
Well, you know what?
They keep, raising the budget for treatment programs.
We do not. We have more treatment today than before for those who have money and good insurance. For those that do not, we don't have that many more. And the ones that have been created have not been what we need for heroin. See, the thing about heroin is the devil, Jeff. I mean, it takes over your soul. It's not smoking pot. It's not drinking alcohol. It's not snorting cocaine. Heroin does something to the person's soul, so they're not afraid of dying. We're not afraid of overdose. We're not afraid of AIDS. When we hear about fentanyl, 100,000 times more than heroin, whatever the number is, it's unbelievable.
Even though it's probably going to kill you.
We go to it. We run towards it, not away from it. And that's what a lot of these professionals today don't understand about addict behavior, that they go after that drug when the normal person says, well, they won't want to do that if we do this, this, and this. No, we need to change behavior by getting them off the street, out of their environment, in a positive place where they can start fresh.
Let's go back to the phones. Sussex County, Delaware. This is Isabel. Thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hi. I appreciate this conversation.
Sure.
I lost a son who
God, it's the worst.
Took his life because he was addicted to heroin. And I have another son who thinks he's okay because he doesn't use heroin. He only uses Suboxone that he buys from elderly people on the street or pills. They got involved in it together probably around 2005. And I lost a son at 33, and my second son is now 33. And I'm sorry?
Ma'am, I really believe very strongly that you need to save this other son. And you need to get him and somehow coerce him. He needs to get into treatment. And not Suboxone treatment, but real solid, long-term, drug-free treatment. Because whatever happened to his brother is still going through his mind.
Isabel, I'm out of time, but I'm going to put you on hold because we're going to be off the air in a second. I'll let you talk to Mike a little bit more, so don't go anywhere. Last words for anybody else dealing with this. Where do you turn for help?
Well, here's the thing. You know, you've got to seek out some help. Most importantly, people need to make sure they have insurance, check their insurance. If they have jobs, make sure they have some resources, but they can't let that stop them. They've got to start somewhere with treatment, whether it's not as intensive, but they have to start somewhere. They can't let it go. They can't assume it's going to be okay. And they can't just believe that Narcan is going to save their life because, again,
Mike,
they're going to use it again.
There. Mike
Anyway.
Gimbel, thanks for stopping by. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Great
Thanks for
to see
having
you,
me.
sir. And thank
As
you for
always.
joining us for Direct Connection. Have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.